there are good councils and there are bad councils. The majority of the galactic species want good for Earth. There are some that don't, but the good is stronger than the bad.
Welcome to Good Vibes TV. I'm your host, Leslie Klein, here to help you raise your vibration so you can thrive. Today marks a special day because we kick off our special series called Galactic Good Vibes, where we dive deep into the experiences of UFO contactees, their healing and transformation. I'm thrilled today to be speaking with Dr. Melanie Barton, a holistic psychotherapist, ordained minister, and energy healer. Since 1985, she's been supporting clients on their emotional, spiritual, and energetic levels. She also works with experiencers, teaches, writes, and is co-authoring a book about how UFO encounters shape faith. Coming to us from Tallahassee, Florida, please welcome Dr. Melanie Barton.
Hello.
Dr. Melanie. Hi, so good to see you. So happy that I'm interviewing you today. So Dr. Barton, please tell us about your first UFO experience.
Well, it's hard to say when the first was because it's been something that's been with me since I can remember. When I was a very young child, I was sick a lot. So I'd spend a lot of time in bed and I was alone, as that was how it was at that time. And when I got ready to go to kindergarten, I remember one of the playmates that I had, I call him Robbie, he said he couldn't go with me. And I said, why can't you go with me? And he said, because your teacher doesn't understand and she won't be able to see me. And I said, oh, okay. And we had ongoing conversations that were telepathic from the time I can remember. And so he said that he would be going away, that I would forget about him, but over time I'd have other people, other beings come to guide me. So that was the first conscious memory I have of that.
So when he said he was going away because you were going to school, when did he appear in your life again?
Well, he appeared in different forms, and I didn't find out till later they were all connected. When I was 8 years old, we moved into a new house. The house had been a doctor's office, and it was 100 years old when we moved into it. And I would have this feeling that something was in my bedroom. So I would be afraid to go upstairs, and I would bribe my parents. I'll do this or I'll do that. If you please, will go upstairs and stay with me till I fall asleep. And they said, this is silly. You're old enough. You should not have this problem. Well, they'd finally leave and I'd hide under the covers because I felt a presence in the wardrobe that was next to my bed. And in this wardrobe is where my father's army uniform was kept and blankets and things like that. Well, one night I finally got brave enough to ask, who are you? Because I could see him in my mind's eye. He was a Native American chief. And I said, why are you here? And he said, I'm here to guide you. And I said, well, why does an 8-year-old need you to guide him? And he said, you won't understand now, but you will later. I said, well, you're scaring me. Just go away. And so he did. He said, but I'm going away now and you'll forget about me, but others will guide you. And during that time, I would also see there was a storage room attached to my bedroom. And when the door was open to the storage room, when I'd look out the window, I would see this small boy who was probably about 7 years old, sitting with his knees bent, his arms around his knees, and he was bluish because he was dead. And apparently he was one of the kids that had been treated by the doctor and did not survive. So that was when I was 8. And then when I was 17 in that house, I had graduated high school, about to turn 18, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I had been at church. My mom and my sisters had gone to New York State. We lived in Michigan. And I was staying home because I didn't feel well. And I'd gone to church, And I brought home a Sunday school paper that talked about missionaries in Africa encountering evil spirits. And it spooked me so bad that I didn't want to be there. And so I could feel this presence. And so I took the paper downstairs to get it out of my room. And when I woke up the next morning, I went in my closet to get my clothes out, and there was that paper laying on the floor. It scared me so bad that I went and sat in the chair by the front door and waited there for my family to come home. So that was when I was 17. And then when I was about to graduate, I was trying to decide what to do because I was supposed to go to college to become a missionary. Well, my parents could not afford their cost after the scholarship. So I'm laying in bed one night, and at 3:00 in the morning, I'm awakened by this shimmering figure at the end of my bed. And all it said to me was, "You're to go to Rochester, New York." And I said, "I don't want to go there." And the spirit said, "You will go." And within 48 hours, I had closed out my bank accounts, dropped out of the community college, and moved to Rochester, New York. So that was my second and third experience. One of the moves was to Syracuse, New York, 701 Catherine Street in Syracuse. And that house was haunted. So I would be in the house, and at that time I had a son who was about a year old, and I was expecting our daughter. And I would lay down in the afternoon to take a nap. And when I'd lay down, I'd hear a knocking on my headboard over my head, and it would call out my name, "Melanie, Melanie, Melanie." And I'd wake up and be petrified. So on the radio, they would play this song called "My Melanie Makes Me Smile." I would call the radio station. I say, "I love that song. Who is the artist of that song?" And they said, "We're not playing that song." I would call my husband up at work and I'd say, "It's playing on the radio now. Turn it on." He'd say, "I have it on that station. It's not playing." So if you look it up, the song "My Melanie Made Me Smile" is a real song. It was by a band out of Australia, and it didn't become published till like a year after I heard the song.
Oh yeah, my melody makes me smile and melts away the pain. A little light comes shining into my life again, and with my melody in my arms, the world's a warmer place.
So that was that experience. So,
Wow. So you were tuning into the song before it actually
before
hit
it
the
actually-
airwaves.
Mhm.
Wow. All right. And so after that experience, did you have other? Now, these I would call paranormal experiences,
We're
right?
definitely paranormal, yes.
'Cause you're dealing with spiritual, entities and spirits and things like that.
Yes, yes.
What happened after that encounter?
So we'll jump ahead to 1991, which would have been about 18 years beyond where we lived in that haunted house. And I had to have surgery that was supposed to be minor. And during that surgery, I had a near-death experience where when I entered into the tunnel, a figure greeted me. And I knew immediately it was the son, Mitchell, that I had miscarried. I was about 4 months along. And he greeted me, and I knew who he was. He knew who I was. And he says, "Hi, Mom. Yes, it's me." I'm the age I would have been. So he was 16 when I saw him there. And he said, "Come on, Mom. I want you to meet the others." I said, "Mitchell, I can't believe I see you. I know you." And I could hold him. I could touch him. I could hug him. And he said, "It's okay, Mom. I want to have you meet the others." And I finally snapped out of it. And I said, "What others?" He said, "Come on, I'll show you." So we got in this little blue rowboat, and he stood at the front of it, and he had a paddle, and he stood up and he paddled us across the water. I sat in the seat in the back and held on. We got over to the other shore. It was a very short trip. And there was Robbie, who I knew, preschool age. There was the boy that was on the roof. There was the Indian chief. There was my neighbor who died from a brain injury, my school friend who died from a car accident, and my grandmother. They were all there. And I said, "Oh, wow. I can't believe I get to be with you people again." And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Do I get to stay?" They said no. And so as I'm here with all of these beings, I said, then why did you bring me back? And they said, we needed to show you some things. I said, okay. So they started showing me scenes, and they said, you won't remember these until they happen in your life going forward. I said, all right. And then they said, we have 2 things for you to focus on when you go back. And I said, all right, what are those 2 things? They said, the first thing is you are to love the unlovable till they can love themselves. And that includes your mom. My mom had been raised by strangers because her parents both had mental health issues. So she didn't know how to give what she didn't get. And so as a child, I was always looking to get that acceptance, and she wasn't able to. So they said, I need you to do that. The second thing they said is, we are going to send clients to you. They will not realize they've been sent, but you will recognize it because we'll remind you. And you are to recognize that they are a gift, a present that we're giving to you. And your job is to open up the present to bring forth the good that's stuck inside to the outside. And I said, okay. And then I was back in my body.
When did you start your psychotherapy work?
Back in 1976, I was allowed to be what's called licensed as a minister in Indiana while my husband at the time was going through seminary. So I began to help him in his ministry, and I had a year of seminary, and then we moved to South Carolina, and I started my undergraduate degree there in psychology. And when I finished that degree, I was accepted to go to Duke University to study theology. But back then, in 1980, women were not very welcome in the pulpit. So I knew that the chances of me being able to find a church after I got my degree was very slim. And I also didn't want to leave my family, which would have been about 5 hours away, to be gone all week to go to school. So at the time, I was working as a therapist at the Drug and Alcohol Commission. And one of my colleagues said to me, why don't you go get a social work degree? She said, it's very marketable and you could do pastoral psychotherapy. So I said, all right. So that was in 1983, I began my master's program at the University of the College of Social Work at the University of South Carolina. And in 1985, I began working with a group of chaplains and pastors. And so I was in a group practice. And then I launched out on my own in 1993. My first UFO experience here was in 1994. She and her children were taken regularly, and I didn't know about it. I didn't connect it to my own experiences. So I did research on it. And the only source I knew back then was, David Jacobs type of thing. So I had her kids make drawings of what they saw. I had her medically checked out. She did have damage, sinus damage from probes being placed inside her nasal cavity. She had a very pronounced extra perception. She could see things that were going to happen and they'd happen. So it scared her and she wanted to squelch that. But I learned working with more and more people that if I helped them to develop that rather than be afraid of it, they could use it to their benefit and help others. So I began working a lot with people who are bipolar and found that when they're making the cross between the depression to the mania or mania to depression, they have a lot of perceptions, a lot of connection to other dimensions. So I started helping them develop their skills so they could tune into what they could know and use that for their benefit and others. When I had the spiritual experience, the out-of-body experience at the end of 91, I began being interested in recycling, spiritual issues, not religious, but spiritual issues. And I began being directed to call my clients together, the ones that wanted to develop their spiritual aspects. And so we called it the Lunatics Group because we knew that we would be laughed at for what we were developing. And so I made the offering to those that I felt like would like to be part of that group. And a number of clients did. And we began doing all sorts of meditations and sharing gifts and developing our talents and abilities. And some of those people are still in connection with one another today.
When did you finally meet the Council of Eight? Was it shortly after, or did it take a while?
It took a while. In 2015, I'd had an experience while I was sleeping. I'd had two experiences. One was after my second husband died. I was asleep and I woke up to see two beings beside my bed. One was 7 feet tall and one was about 3 feet tall. One looked what I would call now either a Nordic or Arcturian, and the other was a gray. And I wasn't afraid, but I said to them, "Oh, hello." I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're working on you because, I had a chronic infection I couldn't get rid of. I'd had for like 14 months. So they were working on me." And the next morning when I woke up, I had 3 fingerprints on the inside of my thighs, and the bladder that they worked on was very sore, and I had a mark on my forehead. And so I had another experience. After my husband died, I was staying with my daughter, and her son at the time was 3 years old. And we woke up in the night. We were huddled in the closet, and he was petrified because they were coming to get us. I have not had hypnosis lately to have all the details of that. He doesn't remember it, but I remember. And I remember telling him, "We're safe, you're okay, I'm here for you." So after those experiences, I contacted MUFON to just make a report. And they said, "Well, there are 2 people near you in the state that you might want to connect with because they might be of help to you." So I met with Denise Stoner and Kathleen Martin, who is the niece of Benny and Barney Hill. I met them in April of 2016 in Orlando when I went there for vacation. And they offered for me to become a referral source for MUFON people, for experiencers, so they would have somebody to help them understand what happened to them. And they said, "Why don't you come to our conference we're having in August?" So I said, okay. So when I came, I was sitting at lunch during one of the sessions, between sessions, and Kevin Briggs, there was an empty seat, and he said, "Would you mind if I sat here?" And I said, "No, of course not, that's fine." So we started talking, and he told me his story, which you'll get when you hear his story. And he said, "They've told me to come to this conference, and I'm to ask people to help me to get disclosure to come to the world." He said, "Would you be willing to advise me and help me with this?" And I said, "Certainly, yes." So as a result, he and Denise and Kathleen and I met, and Kevin started telling us the things that they are telling him to share. And Denise and I recognized that he was channeling. He didn't know what channeling was. And so we explained it to him, and he said, "Oh, okay." And we decided as a group to meet once a month to help him develop the channeling skill and to document what we were doing. So we would meet once a month. We would record the sessions. We'd measure the temperature in the room. We would assess how we felt before and after. And you can read the transcripts of our research in the book Forbidden Knowledge, written by Kathleen Martin. So we did that work for about 2 years, and then we went on to the next phase.
What was the next phase?